I miss baseball, so let's talk about some of the best hitters in MLB history. One of the easier statistics to show who these players are is OPS, on base plus slugging percentage. How often do you get on base, and how far do you get around the base path? Simple. It's really not that great, like Fangraphs explains, because it technically undervalues getting on base compared to hitting for extra bases, something that a stat like WOBA fixes, but I like it for the sake of seeing which players do the best when they get their bat on the ball, with a little boost for the guys that aren't just swinging swords every at-bat.
Don't chop at it, it's not a sword. You're not a sword.
I also like it for one of its derivative stats, OPS+. It's the same stat, but it weighs the player's regular OPS against a league average in a single year, so you can get a better gauge on how much better or worse a batter is compared to the competition. In the American League, 53 players have led in OPS Plus since 1901, and 18 of those players have done so in multiple years. Getting on that list means that for 162 games, you were the cream of the hitting crop, which is an incredible feat. The reason I like looking at it, though, is that it separates the best of the best from the best of the best of the best. Okay, for example, Milton Bradley led the league in OPS Plus in 2008 with Texas at 162, and was pretty much undoubtedly the best at producing the most ideal baseball outcomes, statistically speaking, either hitting for the most bases or at least getting to first. That's really hard to do, and is super impressive, but it was more of an outlier of his career than a breakthrough. It was the only season of his career with more than 20 home runs, plus his batting average on balls in play was nearly 30 points higher than anybody else in the American League, and we don't need to get too into that, but long story short, unless you're Ichiro, that's not a particularly reliable way to get on base. I'm not trying to take anything away from Bradley. He had the best season of all AL batters that year, and he carved out a good 12-year career.
And Bradley, wow, he's called out, he was punched out, and now he's thrown out of the game. Milton Bradley's second time this week.
But the point of this list is to show the difference between who was the best and who was the best a lot. 47 of these 53 players are Hall of Fame eligible, and remember, these are prime candidates for Cooperstown, but taking this crown multiple years can really separate you from the pack, which it has proven to do. Of the 32 eligible players that led in the statistic only once, 12 have made it to the Hall of Fame. Now, to be fair, this number could go up. Manny Ramirez is on the ballot right now, and he's been wavering a little, but we've seen guys like Edgar Martinez or Tim Raines surge before. Joe Mauer seems like he has a pretty serious shot when he's eligible, and who knows what we'll get from Jose Abreu for the rest of his career. But Cooperstown has always been more focused on longevity of success over the lightning in a bottle kind of guys, so leading an OPS Plus once doesn't exactly lay out a red carpet for you.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
However, winning it more than once does do you a lot of favors, apparently, because 12 of the 15 eligible players that have donned that garb at least twice are in the Hall of Fame. Some of these players are MLB history mainstays. Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth washed their jockstraps with this stat when they played, earning the top spot 12 times each, while Ted Williams placed first 9 times and Mickey Mantle 8 times. This is the top tier of the American League, the grand poobahs, the cat's pajamas. But what about the other 3 guys that missed out? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, these 3 guys only led the AL in OPS Plus 2 times each, so they're the most reasonable snubs. Let's go through them one by one. The first Cooperstown miss is Mark Mcgwire, and you probably know why he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Smokey, this is not Nam, this is bowling. There are rules.
But I think it's worth going over just how poorly timed his eligibility really was for him. Mcgwire dodged public acknowledgement of his use of steroids for a pretty long time. He admitted to using a muscle-enhancing drug in 1998, and even though the drug was never banned from Major League Baseball until Mcgwire was gone, he wasn't exactly in good graces with baseball writers. Time heals all wounds, though. Mcgwire went on to break Roger Maris's 61-61 home run record, and after retiring in 2001, all he had to do was wait and hope people would overlook that. Maybe it would have worked, but in 2005, Jose Canseco, who also led an OPS Plus once and is also not in the Hall of Fame, published a book that, among other things, said that he personally injected Mcgwire with steroids as early as the 1980s. Okay, not exactly a glowing point on his resume, but he still had 2 years to undo the damage. Or at least he would have if the Mitchell report that brought steroid use in baseball right to the forefront of everybody's radar didn't come out in 2007, the first year Mcgwire was eligible for the Hall of Fame. He probably saw the writing on the wall, because 3 years later, after a significant stagnation of votes, he publicly admitted to using steroids, but it was too little too late, and Mcgwire was removed after 10 years on the ballot, finishing with 12.3% of votes in 2016. If the general baseball public starts to lighten the load that steroid use puts on a Cooperstown campaign, I could see Mcgwire getting in at some point. I cannot say the same for our second OPS Plus god and our second juicer, Jason Giambi. Giambi was quite good in his prime, peaking in 2000 as he won AL MVP, and very much unpeaking when the San Francisco Chronicle reported in 2004 that Giambi admitted to using performance-enhancing drugs in a grand jury testimony and later appeared on the Mitchell report. Giambi didn't go on the Hall of Fame ballot until this year, and, well, he won't be on it again for a while. Now, at this point, I'm sure you're probably thinking, okay, who's the third OPS Plus star that fell out of favor by cheating? But this one's actually quite different. He was born in North Dakota and wasn't taken until the 31st round of the MLB draft. He spent 7 years in the minor league system, and as far as we know, he never cheated or used steroids. His name is Travis Hafner.
If that doesn't give you goosebumps, you don't have a pulse.
I'm not going to pretend like Hafner is a nobody. He was top 10 in MVP voting twice during his stint with the Indians, and for a short time, you could pencil him in for at least 100 RBI every year. Perhaps one of Hafner's most notable points in his career came on August 13, 2006, when Hafner went yard off Luke Hudson to mark his 6th Grand Slam that season, tying the MLB record set by Don Mattingly in 1987, the year after he himself led the American League in OPS+. The thing is, other than that, Hafner doesn't really have a lot of accolades to show for such a talented hitter. Hafner got on the Hall of Fame ballot in 2019 and didn't receive a single vote, which is fine. He only played for 12 years, and only about 4 of those seasons were really Cooperstown level. But also, Placido Polanco got 2 votes the same year, and he had a career OPS Plus below league average. It's not really relevant, but it's emblematic of the recognition that Hafner's career lacked overall. So he's not going to get into the Hall of Fame. That's fair, but he was a great designated hitter. He probably won at least 1 Silver Slugger award, right? No, see, he happened to play in the AL when a certain large father was burning the world down as a DH himself, and also later admitted to using steroids, but whatever. We'll chalk it up to bad timing. He definitely made an all-star game, though. They let anyone and their goldfish play in the Midsummer Classic, and you don't even have to be the best at your position to make it. Okay, you probably see where this one's going. As I'm sure you're aware, the National League does not use a designated hitter spot, and at this time, when they played the All-Star Game in an NL park, they didn't use a DH. That doesn't disqualify Hafner. In fact, Ortiz made it every year from 2004 to 2006, Hafner's prime, but the Cleveland Indians star did not. The All-Star Game was in NL stadiums both in 04 and 06, and Ortiz and Hafner were pretty neck and neck, so I get it. But 2005 was arguably Hafner's best season. He finished 5th in MVP voting this year, and they were playing in Detroit, where the AL could have 2 DHs on the team. So what happened? Well, Ortiz got the starting nod, as we know, but the other wrinkle in this equation is that every team has to send at least 1 player to the All-Star Game, and that's why Mike Sweeney was the backup to Ortiz, while Hafner had to watch the game from his couch. Now, Sweeney played for 16 seasons, most of which were very good with the Royals, and up to this point in time, he had already made 4 All-Star appearances, but the problem is that Hafner was definitely playing better. Going into the break, the two had nearly the exact same batting average, and almost every statistic goes in favor of Hafner. Hafner had nearly 20 more RBI, he was slugging about 50 points higher, and his overall OPS was outpacing Sweeney's by over 100. I get why every team needs to have representation at the All-Star Game. It's good press for teams that suck, and the Royals definitely did in 2005, limping into the break at 30 and 57. This begs the question, though, if every team has to send somebody, who are the Indians sending instead of Hafner? Well, in 2005, the Indians sent Bob Wickman, and he was very deserving. He had a 2.7 ERA heading into the break as the Tribe's closer, and fun fact, his sinker was so good because he lost part of his index finger in a farming accident when he was a kid. Anyway, 2004 was a similar story. The Indians sent pitcher Jake Westbrook, who was having a good year, so that's okay too. But it's 2006 that gets under my skin a little bit. This is when Grady Sizemore made his first All-Star appearance, and he garnered a lot of attention this season, largely by leading the American League in runs scored. Generally speaking, runs scored is a stupid statistic that tells you next to nothing about a player's ability. It tells you that a player is getting on base, even though there are much better statistics for that.
He gets on base a lot, Rocco. Do I care if it's a walk or a hit? Pete?
You do not.
And it also tells you that whoever follows them in the lineup is doing a good job. Sizemore routinely batted leadoff, and guess who spent most of his time batting third or fourth in the same lineup? That's right, you guessed it, Travis Hafner, which is probably why Sizemore entered the break with 71 runs, and Hafner entered the break with 74 RBI and 68 runs scored of his own, among a ton of other statistics that were significantly better, like a higher batting average, on-base percentage, and a 111 OPS. No use crying over spilled milk, I guess, but it just seems wrong that Hafner's biggest All-Star Weekend accomplishment will go down as a home run in the celebrity softball game in 2019. After 2006, Hafner's production slowed down a little bit, and injuries in 2008 and 2009 pretty much put the kibosh on him ever returning to peak form. But another big factor in his decline was the rise of the shift. Hafner wasn't exactly a spray can at the plate. He was a lefty who favored pulling the ball, pretty standard for most players. But because of this, then Rays manager Joe Madden began employing what was called the Pronk shift. It's pretty common now to see this for hitters, and it wasn't exactly new at the time, but still certainly seen much less frequently, and it really worked. According to Fangraphs, Hafner for his career batted over 320 without the shift and below 250 with it on, and that's a significant drop. I'm not saying any of this as if he's the best player you've never heard of, or to spark some Hafner Hall of Fame campaign, no. But I do think it's worth giving some lip service to a guy that did almost exactly what you want out of a baseball player and never got his time in the spotlight. For a guy who graduated high school in a class of 8 people, clawed through NAIA college ball, spent 7 years in the minor league system, only to start raking when he finally got his chance in the majors, he deserves a tip of the cap. Have yourself a day, Travis Hafner.
This couple of years, how do you enjoy retirement?
It's been great. This is my 30th.
I'll tell you how he enjoys it, fantasy football.
Well, yeah.
All right?
Yeah, I hear that.
And Jensen doesn't enjoy that.